Welcome to My Hometown, the program that explores clubs, organizations, businesses, and issues across Nassau and Suffolk counties and sheds light on the different towns that are making a difference.
Hello and welcome to My Hometown. I'm Bill Horan, and today we're going to meet a successful businesswoman from Merrick here in Nassau County who just wrote a book about being a triathlete. Our guest today is Hilary J.M. Topper, the CEO of HJMT Public Relations, and the author of a new book called From Couch Potato to Endurance Athlete, a portrait of a non-athletic triathlete. Hilary has over 30 years' experience in public relations, marketing, and social media services. She's also a blogger, podcaster, and adjunct professor at Hofstra University. Hilary, welcome to My Hometown on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC.
Thank you so much for having me.
That is some impressive resume. I don't know how you even get to do half of those things in a day, but can you kind of fill us in, tell us about yourself and how you got to become the CEO of, if I'm correct, your own company?
Yeah. So I started the company back in 1992 when my daughter was an infant. And before that, I had worked at very big PR firms across the country. I also worked at nonprofit organizations. And I always had it in me that I wanted to start my own business. And so here I am 30 years later.
And you just said when your daughter was an infant. Sure, what does a new mom have to do with the daughter who's an infant? They're not any trouble. They don't require much time. Start your own business so you have more things to do, right?
Exactly. That's just me. I just pile it on. And, for me, it works because the more I have to do, the busier I am, the more productive I am.
And I'm going to say that is probably the secret. Having talked to you before the show, I'm looking at this amazed. I was kidding you. Do you ever sleep? When do you sleep? Etc. But if it works for you,
right? And
I guess that's for anybody in our audience. If some system works for them, whether it's working in evening hours or starting your own business, it works for you, and obviously it does. Now, how did this book come about and who's it geared toward?
Sure. So I have a blog. It's called atriathletesdiary.com. And I've been writing this blog since 2011. It's been a long time. It started off as a runner's diary, and it talked about me trying to get into running. And at some point, I've been working so much with my business, trying to build it, trying to feed my staff, just doing everything I could to really market the business. And I was finding that I was just getting really heavy, and I was almost turning 50 at that point. And I thought, I need to change my life. So I joined a gym. I joined Hollywood Health Club, in Long Beach, and I hired a personal trainer, and he said to me, go on the treadmill and warm up. Little did he know, I've never been on a treadmill before, so I didn't even know how to turn it on. I had to get people to help me turn the treadmill on. But then as time went by, I was on the treadmill and I started running on it, and eventually I took it outside. Anyway, I started to document all of my journey through this whole thing. And at some point last year actually, my SEO guy said to me, Hilary, you have so much content on your A Triathlete's Diary blog. You've got to try to take it off. So what I did was I started going through the blog, and I noticed that I had all these stories from when I started running. I was 48 years old to my first triathlon at 53.
I'm sorry to interrupt. You started running at 48 years old?
Correct.
Okay, I didn't know that. But
yes,
I just started running. Okay.
Yep, I started running at 48, and I did my first triathlon at 53. Little did I know, when I did my first triathlon, I did not know how to swim, and I barely knew how to bike. I didn't know how to shift the gears because I grew up in Long Beach, and in Long Beach we have a boardwalk, and everybody goes 5 miles an hour on the boardwalk. So I didn't realize that you had to go faster than that in a triathlon.
Now, Hilary, again, you mentioned, and we hear the term triathlete a lot, But can you tell myself and our audience exactly what a triathlete is? What does that require?
Sure. It's a person who does swim, bike, and run in one event. So there are different types of events. There are sprint triathlons, which are short. They consist of maybe a 500-meter swim, a 10-mile bike, and a 5K run. That would be one of the shorter ones. I mean, so there are super sprints as well, but the sprint is the typical. Then there's the Olympic distance, and you'll see that in the Olympics, actually, where people go when Gergensen, when she won the Olympics in Rio, she went almost a mile swim, 26-mile bike, and then a 10K run. So it's all in the same. And then you go up to a half Ironman, which would be 70.3, and then a full Ironman, which is 140.1. And basically, when you do the full Ironman, that's a full day. It's all day long. It's a 2.4 mile swim. It's 114 mile bike, or 110, 114, and a full marathon. So you're doing all three events together, and they count the transition in between. So when you're switching your shoes, when you're getting out of your wetsuit, that's all counting toward your total time.
I was kidding you before the show, and we were laughing, and I asked you, did you do something wrong? And the judge said, instead of putting you in jail, I'm going to assign you to run triathlete events for 5 years, because that's what it sounds like.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, it would be a penalty. Obviously, you enjoy it. You have a lot of fun. You're laughing about it, and we're glad. Now, who should be reading? Who is this book for?
So the book is for people who are like me, who either were working all the time and never had time for themselves, or they just want to make a change in their life. I mean, this could be a 20-year-old who is just, having some issues, maybe going to school and needs a change somehow, or it's a housewife, or a stay-at-home mom, rather, who, just need some time for themselves and they want to make a change. That's this type of book. And, there's a lot of issues that I talk about in the book. I'm not only talking about triathlons and running, but I also talk about business. I talk about my personal life. I had a lot of issues that happened during the last 10 years, and that's what this book is about. It's almost like a 10-year memoir. And, during that 10-year period, my mother passed away. Then a couple of months later, it was Sandy, and we lost our house. To, a couple of years after that, my sister she just got an aneurysm and stroke and passed away before she turned 60, and it was just all of these like traumas that happened to me along the route. Then my dad had Alzheimer's disease, and I had to deal with that. So it's not just about the triathlon and the triathlon journey. I also include my business and how it went I was really doing fantastic. And we had an office in Millville to the time when, Sandy came and everything kind of bottomed out. Then it picked back up again, and it's been a roller coaster ride. So I talk about all of that in the book.
So really real life, especially your real life, what you're going through.
My real life, but I also try to help people, motivate them and inspire them to get off the couch and to do something that maybe is out of their comfort zone.
And we often say to our guests, that you're listening to our guest here who has gone through this. Give something a try, even if it's part of it, even if it's just to read the book. Maybe it opens up a door to you in life that's something you'd like to try. Maybe you'd like to be a swimmer, a biker, or maybe even just the marathon part of it. Maybe the triathlete is a bit too much, or you'll graduate to that, or just to get into an exercise program. But you'll see, obviously, what Hilary can do. She's teaching at a college. She runs her own business. She wrote a book. She has a podcast. I'm running out of time to tell you all these things. And, of course, she trains and runs in these events and takes part in them, swimming and biking and everything else. What prompted a book in the midst of all this? You didn't have enough to do?
Yeah. So when my SEO guy said to me, Hilary, you've got way too much content on the A Triathlete's Diary blog, what I did was I started archiving pieces and putting them and printing them and putting them all together. And the next thing I knew, I had 350 pages. So 350 pages of this whole story about the last 10 years. But that's when I decided that, you know what, I need to put in about my personal life. I need to put in about my mental state during some of these events. I mean, they're really tough. And when you're going out really long, you come to terms with things in your own head, especially when you're training for a marathon where you're out there for, several hours and, you start thinking about things and trying to really come to terms with things that happened to you when you were growing up or whatever. So I took those stories and I added it into the book. And now the book is it's over 300 pages, I think, but I think it reads fast.
Hilary, we want to find out more, but at this point in the show, I'd like to let our audience know you're listening to My Hometown on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. I'm Bill Horan, and today we're talking to successful businesswoman Hilary J.M. Topper. She's the CEO of HJMT Public Relations and the author of From Couch Potato to Endurance Athlete, a portrait of a non-athletic triathlete. What you talk of an endurance athlete, what defines that? What is there a cutoff from a baseball player or a ping pong player?
Well, it's more of someone who goes out long. So, for example, I did the Maggie Fisher swim. Now, mind you, 5 years ago, I didn't know how to swim at all. I thought I knew how to swim. I knew how to doggy paddle. I thought that was good enough, right? But somebody, Brian Crude, he was from Open Water Swim. He jumped in the pool with me and showed me how to blow bubbles. I mean, it was that granular. I mean, I didn't even know how to breathe in the water. So here, last year, I did an event where I swam from Fire Island to Bayshore. It was the ferry route I swam. And it took me 4 hours to do it, but I did it. And that would be considered an endurance event.
Now, this is a personal question, but after you swim for 4 hours, do you say to yourself, okay, now I go to Carvel and get the biggest sundae? Or do you order a pizza with all the trimmings and say, this is for me, the rest of the people can order what they want? Seriously, do you give yourself some reward like that?
I do. I mean, I just did an event this weekend, as I was telling you earlier. It was the Mighty Hamptons event, and I did an aqua bike. And after doing these severe hills in the Hampton Sag Harbor area, I was so hungry after the event. I actually had a bagel, and I was like, "This is great," because I'm always trying to lose weight.
Well, I'll tell you, I had a bagel this morning, and I didn't do any of those things, and I don't feel bad about it. So I think the rest of the audience will join with me in saying that, we have a bagel a lot of times, but I thought you might really, really, really splurge and to get into things. You mentioned some of these other races. What are some of your favorites on Long Island? Are there particular ones that you like? I love
Event Power. Long Island has great events. They have, there's one in Smith Point that I love. It's a sprint, and it's flat and it's fast, and it's just so much fun. There's a great community on Long Island, of triathletes and endurance athletes, and everybody knows each other, and there's just such great camaraderie and, respect for each other and things that we do. And so that's a big one that I do. And I love the Mighty Hamptons one. That was an event, also Event Power Long Island, where Steve Tarpinian, he was a triathlete, he was an author, he was a coach, and unfortunately he passed away. So they named this race after him. So this is like a memorial race, and I like to do that. So there's a lot of different races that I love on Long Island.
Have you had any injuries that you can talk about that you've had to overcome, or is there a prevalent one for runners that non-runners wouldn't know about, but if you start out, you're probably going to, anything from blisters to headaches or sore feet?
Yeah, all of the above, right? If you're not hydrating well enough, you're going to get those headaches. And I used to get those headaches all the time. It's terrible. It really depends on the nutrition and hydration that you take before, during, and after when you're training. The other thing that I've been struggling with was the Achilles tendonitis. I still struggle with it, and I haven't really been running. And the reason why I haven't been running that often is because I had knee surgery I was training for a half Ironman. I had just come off a 60-mile bike ride and was going to run for a half hour. And as I started running, I guess it was within my first 10 minutes of the run, I was in Jones Beach. I heard and I knew something was wrong. My meniscus pulled, and I ended up going to, I thought it was nothing. I tried to train anyway with it. And anyway, I finally listened to my body and went to an orthopedist, and I had to get the surgery for meniscus removal. Yeah. So.
Now, is there anybody else do you do this, I want to say solo by yourself, or is this a family thing where children or neighbors or sisters, brothers, husband is into it?
I tried to get my children involved. My husband did run one half marathon with me, and he was done. He said, never again. And he's been holding to that.
Okay. A man of his word. Good. Okay.
My kids, my daughter is a runner. I think we've run together many times. We've done a few races together. She's very fast. And my son, I also have run a couple of races with, but he doesn't really enjoy it. He likes spending time with me, but...
but that's interesting, and I think it also tells our audience there's nothing wrong with that. Not everybody is meant to be a ping pong player or a golfer or a triathlete. Right. It might be for you, and I think you're exposing it to people and telling them your story, and amazingly enough that you can be running your own business, have a family life, have children, a spouse, take care of a home, and yet you seem to get a lot of time for this, and you enjoy it. Now, one of the things, too, as I'm asking you questions, it just comes to me, are you one of those super organized people who at 9:03, the house is clean, the breakfast dishes are put away, you run till 10:17, you get back for Dr. Phil? Well,
I don't know that I'm that organized, but I am organized with the sport. I do set myself up the night before. And that's what I tell people, like just getting into the sport or just starting to run. Put your clothes out the night before. Have the coffee ready in the morning. So all I have to do is put my clothes on and head out the door. And I'm out the door usually around between 5 and 6 o'clock in the morning. Even now I'll go out with a light on my bike or, a helmet, bike helmet, whatever.
I'm just thinking that could be dangerous though for you.
Yeah. It's better in the summer when I prefer going out.
Or at least one of those jackets with the reflectors on. And
yes, absolutely.
We'll have to talk some more about that and find out what's going on. Hilary, before we go further, again, I'd like our audience to know if you're just tuning in, you're listening to My Hometown on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. I'm Bill Horan, and today we're talking to businesswoman from Merrick who just wrote a book called From Couch Potato to Endurance Athlete, a portrait of a non-athletic triathlete. Her name is Hilary J.M. Topper. She is the CEO of HJMT Public Relations and the author of the book, as we said, From Couch Potato to Endurance Athlete. Hilary, with all this, let's get into your other life. I was going to say your secret life, but there's nothing secret about it. You've told us. You're a CEO of a public relations company. With all the training and the different sports you're doing and everything you're involved with, when do you get time for that, and how did that come about?
I started the firm again in 1992, and I have always had amazing people who work for me. And now I have a partner who is incredible. And she's been working with me for almost 20 years.
So again, finding the right person, I guess, because I was going to say your spouse too must be very good, that he can put up with time that you're doing things, and he's going to be alone at some time when he wants to do so, or maybe he enjoys it, and it might be just like that perfect match, someone who enjoys his time watching the ball game or doing whatever he prefers, and you do what you prefer.
Right.
Sometimes that's the best relationships.
Absolutely. And sometimes he does get mad at me that I go to bed so early or that I get up so early and then I'm tired at like 3 o'clock in the afternoon and might have to take a nap on a Saturday.
But you know what? You're doing what you love. And we always hear the expression, if you do what you love, you never work a day in your life. And obviously you enjoy the public relations aspect.
Absolutely.
Tell us a little more about how that develops on Long Island. Is this a good location for a public relations company? You're near the city. Does that help out?
Yeah, it definitely does. I mean, we have clients all across the country. So it really doesn't matter where you're located. I mean, especially now with COVID, but this has always been the case for my firm. I mean, we've always represented clients from all over the country. And we represent, all different types of companies. I mean, we're all generalists, basically. So we're not just dealing with, law firms or accounting firms. We deal with, wineries and accounting firms and law firms, but other things, products and you name it. We've represented so many different people out on our, companies either on Long Island or around the country. And yeah, it's been great. I mean, I absolutely love it. It's always been a passion of mine.
I'm laughing to you because I feel like it's one of those Dr. Phil shows where he's talking to one of those people with 6 personalities. And in the morning you're grouchy, at this time, because I'm asking you a triathlete, which is 3 sports. I'm asking you, you're the CEO of your own company. Mm-hmm. You teach at Hofstra. Mm-hmm. You didn't have enough to do to fill in some extra time. So talk about that a little bit. What's it like over there?
So yeah, I love teaching. I love being a mentor. I've been an adjunct professor now for about 8 years at Hofstra. And I teach digital communications. I teach public speaking. I teach media campaigns, you name it. I mean, I'm like, they keep throwing it in and I keep succeeding, but I just love it. I love the energy that I get from the kids. I mean, it's just amazing. So, yeah.
Do you ever wake up one morning and say, oh my gosh, I forgot to file my taxes, pay my taxes, and even fill them out? No, I mean, just one of the things that most of us would think of, that there's a big gap and you're doing so much.
Yeah.
And if you're running in a race and doing this or I didn't feed those children for a week, I wonder if anybody's feeding them or did the dog get his, something like that.
Right.
Does that happen?
I mean, it does happen, but the thing of it is that I keep a lot of lists and I try to be as organized as possible. And maybe the house doesn't get as clean as it should, but I'm organized in a way that I could get out the door in the morning, do what I have to do, and then come back and work and teach and blog and podcast and do what I need to do.
Well, the other saying is do what you do best and let someone else do the rest. And
right.
if you're obviously very happy doing these things, you're healthy with them. It seems to be working for you, your family, and your business everyday life. So if there's someone else who could be hired to help out around the house or do the gardening or something that most of us might be doing, hey, it's a win-win because you're going to be a happier person. You're enjoying it. And for good health, we would pay a doctor, $50,000 for an operation, or if the pills we're taking, better you don't have to do that and you stay in good health. Again, I feel like I'm going down a checklist. Aside from all the other things we talked about, you're a blogger, you have a podcast. What's the podcast about?
Yeah, so I have a podcast. It's called Hilary Topper On Air, and it basically helps people grow both personally and professionally. This season, we have been interviewing people from the book, which is kind of cool. So, either people from the book or people who have made a huge impact on my life. Like, I just interviewed this woman, Julie Moss, who she was one of the first women triathletes, and she really made a name for the sport for women. So she's just amazing. I interviewed some other amazing people and then people within my my life. I have a running group every Sunday, and I teach run walk method. So I've been, I had a bunch of my runners on the show, talking to them about how they felt about running and how they felt about the run walk method and what that meant. And excuse me. So that's my podcast, and my blog, HilaryTopper.com, is a lifestyle blog. I write about travel. I write about food. I write a lot about food. I write about music, anything that interests me. If I read a book that I love, I'll put it in my blog.
You have time to read books.
I do.
You either have a 30-hour day or a 48-hour day that we don't know about, but you're remarkable that you're getting this in. And I think, Hilary, we're laughing about it, but what's great, just by talking to some people about it, they're going to say, well, wait, I thought I was busy because yesterday afternoon I went to the post office and I picked up the cleaning and I went to the bank. Now they listen to your schedule and they go, oh my gosh, I could have gotten in 22 more things. And even if I do 2 more things, I've increased my production by, no, I'm serious, 150% or so and so. But until I hear someone like you that you could do this, or even continue to exercise as you talk about and enjoy it as much as you do, I think most people think exercise, I don't want to even, that's a dirty word. But you're obviously very happy. You're smiling through this. No one is making you do it.
No.
And you could just move into the career aspects of what you're talking about and, knock off all these things and do very well and obviously very successful. What are some tips you'd give someone who's listening today and hearing this? And you've probably talked to many different groups. Something you'd tell our audience that you want them to know about and leave thinking of you with the show?
Well, I think that if you need a change, if you are unhappy with the way your life is going right now, this book is for you. This book will motivate you and inspire you to get out there and do something that is amazing, because everybody out there is amazing.
And I think those are great words for us. And when you say this book, I want our audience to know the book is From Couch Potato to Endurance Athlete, a portrait of a non-athletic triathlete. So notice the words non-athletic. This is, Hilary's not telling you she's a great athlete, but she's hanging in there. She's doing this. She obviously enjoys it, and she's very successful at many things in life. Hilary, thank you so much. I'd like our audience again to know that you've been listening to My Hometown on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. I'm Bill Horan, and today we're talking to Hilary J.M. Topper. She is the CEO of HJMT Public Relations and the author, as we said, of From Couch Potato to Endurance Athlete, a portrait of a non-athletic triathlete. Hilary, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you so much, Bill. I appreciate you having me.
We've had a lot of fun. You've left us with a lot of good messages, and I'm sure we have a lot of new readers of your book. So I'd like our audience to know that if you're just finishing up with our show, you've been listening to My Hometown on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. Thanks for listening to this week's special edition of My Hometown.
We'd like to get your feedback on My Hometown. Send your comments to whpc@ncc.edu. Nassau Community College, where success starts and continues. Till next time, this is Bill St. James. And remember, there's no town like your hometown.